So we're here as part of Project Hawker, which is a circuit of Britain. Harry Hawker, the great Australian pilot, did 100 years ago, or attempted it 100 years ago. Went from Southampton all the way up the east coast and got as far as just north of Dublin before he crashed. We're doing it because I'm a mad Australian, and Hawker is a very important name to remember. He was a pioneering aviator, did lots of things. He was one of the early seaplane amphibian pilots, and that's why we're doing it in this amphibian, which is the oldest airworthy amphibian in the UK. The Caterlina, there are 20 of us that own it, and it's based at the Imperial War Museum, Duxford. That's why I've got a bucket there to do a bit of support work for them. And the flight's going around for Project Hawker, but it's for Hawker, but it's also raising funds for the Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund and Imperial War Museum. What can I tell you about the Caterlina? We're over 3,300 made, and these days there's probably only about 15 that are airworthy, and that means that they're either flying or capable of being put back into the air. So there's not many, and this is the only one in the UK.
Built yesterday by the looks of it.
Sorry?
Built yesterday by the looks of it.
Well, we take tender loving care. She was built in 1943 at Carterville in Quebec and operated by the Royal Canadian Air Force. So strictly speaking, she's a Canzo, although most people know it as a PBY5A. P for patrol, B for bomber. Y was the code given to Consolidated because C had gone to Curtis. 5 was the 5th in the series, and A because it was an amphibian. But most Catalinas weren't amphibian, they were pure flying boats. So crews coming out to them would have been brought out in a tender. These blisters, the front third was fixed, the rear 2/3, the bottom bit slid up. So the crew would have climbed in through a blister and then gone to their cruise stations. Where you're sitting, there would have been 2 air observers. So they'd be sitting there looking out for submarines, monitoring convoys, searching for down airmen, those sorts of things. They had a 50 calibre machine gun each for protection. And where our air stair is, there was a little bit of a flap to pop another machine gun in. Now, the Catalinas were a great long-range aircraft. There were flights between Perth and Western Australia and Ceylon, or Sri Lanka as it's now known, which were known as the Double Sunrise, over 24 hours duration. In fact, the longest one took 33 hours, so a bit of time. So there were some facilities. In this area there were some rest bunks. This side there were some primitive cooking facilities. And in the tail there was a primitive latrine. But there are no sort of mod cons. This aircraft, it's got no heating or cooling. We can't fly too high because there's no oxygen system. But it's a pure pleasure and privilege to fly this historic aircraft. Today's flight, we're going from here down the Land's End, back around to Falmouth to do a display there and then onward. The reason why we're doing displays, in 1913 Harry Hawker had 8 control points and he had to land at each one on the water. To dunk the Caterlina in salt water is a bit of an insult. It's about £20,000 cleaning cost each time you do that, and the risk is just too great. So what we've been doing is an air display at each location to entertain the folk on the ground. And hey ho, it's her 70th birthday, and why not give the old girl a treat? So she's been showing herself off, and in grand style. Yesterday we had a great time. We flew over Pembroke Dock, and the crowds down there were magnificent. So it's very pleasing for us too. So there we are. Coming back to the crew, in the central section, that's where the flight engineer sat. He sat up on a seat in the pylon so he could look out either side at the engines. He had some levers to shut the fuel on and off, and mixture control, so you control the sort of air-fuel mix. And then up front, David will explain to you. David's our crew chief. I mentioned the plane's owned by 20 of us. Of that 20, 10 are pilots, and we bid to fly the aircraft. I've organised Project Hawker, so it's slightly different, so I've flown the whole way around. David and John Warman, the captain, joined me in Oban. Prior to that I had Rod Brooking and Sean Jarvis, and the team's been great to do what we've done.
Equipment in terms of radios and GPS and that sort of thing, so from that point of view, yes, absolutely. And then in terms of day-to-day flying, we operate from a strict operating manual which is approved by the CAA. So we're governed, like all aviation, we're governed by the CAA, so we comply with what they require, but we have a very good working relationship with them, built up over many years.
In a way, it's a bit like running a preserved steam locomotive on the main line. They've got to conform to certain...
Exactly. Europe. Been as far as Moscow in it last year.
What do they think
Iceland. Well, I love it. I mean, it's
an aeroplane.
I mean, it's not a unique aeroplane, but it's unique's a very poorly used word, but it's certainly a rare aeroplane.
Absolutely.
So it creates a lot of interest wherever it goes.
The fact that it still flies and is airworthy is unique,
Yeah.
given the number built and the number still flying.
Well, it's certainly rare.